Ben McKee, Patrick Brown, Go Vols 24/7 here on campus on Monday of Texas A&M week. Getting back into action, Tennessee football is. Josh Heupel just met with the media, also spoke to Tyler Barron and Jacob Warren, and we will obviously start with the head ball coach and a lot of questions about what Tennessee will do in the passing game after Brew McCoy's injury. And obviously it starts with the receivers, and Josh Heupel did not want to answer my question last week when I asked him if Dante Thornton would play more on the perimeter, and he said today that yes, that is absolutely a possibility.
Yeah, the new depth chart came out and had Caleb Webb and Chaz Nimrod, the two redshirt freshmen, bracketed as co-starters where Brew McCoy used to be. So it might be one of those guys, but Josh Heupel was definitely not willing to rule Dante Thornton out of being one of those guys. Now, Dante did miss the South Carolina game, so he's still sort of a question mark as he gets back on the practice field and tries to work towards being ready on Saturday. But that's obviously a big question, Ben. I mean, you're either going to be counting on two guys that have 5 career catches between them and Webb and Nimrod, or a guy that has worked some outside in Thornton, but I don't know if he's had any game reps out there. So in any case, it's going to be a new face out there, and then big shoes to fill with what Brew McCoy. I know he hadn't really been playing like a number one receiver because his passing game's been a little up and down, but if there was going to be a number one receiver, it's probably going to be him. So big shoes to fill, and they're going to need some of those guys to step up, but there's different ways to account for those guys with this offense.
Yeah, and one thing I don't think people are talking enough of is that these tight ends can absolutely help make up for the loss of Brew McCoy. Obviously, you're not going to replace Brew McCoy. He's a future NFL receiver, more likely than not. But Jacob Warren looked really good in the passing game against South Carolina. McCallan Castles is much better than he played in the second half against South Carolina. They need to get Castles going, and I think they need to keep feeding Jacob Warren the ball because the tight ends can absolutely help more than they already have in the passing game.
Yeah, there's not another receiver who's 6'3", 220 and built and plays like a linebacker like Brew McCoy does. But those tight ends are both big bodies. Warren's 6'6", 250. He's continued to develop, and Castles is 6'5", 250 in that range too. So both those guys have done a really good job blocking. Obviously, as tight ends, they want to get their hands on the football as much as possible. I'm sure they watched some of the NFL games yesterday and just see how involved tight ends are. But they're doing a good job in the run game, and I do think you could see them more involved in the pass game. We saw Warren get some more targets in the South Carolina game after McCoy's injury, so that could be a direction that Tennessee goes to sort of shift things in their passing game.
Yeah, and the running game with the way they're running the football, Tennessee is right now, that can absolutely take pressure off of the passing game as well. This game, how Tennessee replaces Brew McCoy will be very important, but to me, what will dictate the outcome of this game is how Tennessee's defensive line can get after Max Johnson, and more importantly, how Tennessee's offensive line that looked much better against South Carolina, how they play against a Texas A&M defensive line that might be the best in the country.
Yeah, it's a really good group, and every week in this game, in this league, is a line of scrimmage game, and this one's going to be no different. Tennessee got really good line of scrimmage play in the win against South Carolina, but the challenge is going to be different. Texas A&M has a lot of former 5- and 4-star guys that are on that defensive line that played a lot last year. A lot of them were freshmen, and now those guys are making a lot of plays. There's some older guys in that group that are making a lot of plays. There's probably several NFL players in that group, and they gave Alabama some trouble, but Alabama was able to make some plays down the field. So if you can hold up against that group, and if you can stay just ahead enough of the chains and run the ball just a little bit, there's chances to make plays down the field. On the flip side, Tennessee's defensive line needs to bring the same production and disruption they did against South Carolina. They won't be going up against an offensive line starting 2 freshmen like South Carolina had, but you're playing at home. This is an offensive line in Texas A&M that just gave up 5 sacks to Alabama, who's also a very good defensive front too. So that defensive line should be feeling good about its chances of making another big impact, and they're going to need it this weekend.
Absolutely. Tennessee and Texas A&M kicks off at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on Saturday on CBS, and Go Vols 24/7 will have plenty of coverage leading up to Saturday's game all week long. For Patrick Brown, I'm Ben McKee.